Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We may be in for a bumpy ride tonight. We just lost internet connection. Of course, we're in lovely Florida. We're in the summertime. It's always storming, and it is storming here.
And our guest tonight is in North Carolina, and she's had the same problem for the last couple of hours. So
Chanel says hello. Hello, Chanel. We love you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for tuning in.
Chanel.
Caleb Pirtle said the Alleghenies hold a lot of secrets. Stacy's searching for them all.
She is. Even backstage right now, she's still searching for them.
Joe Conchel said, it must be Wednesday. Howdy, Rob and Joan. It is.
Howdy, Joe.
Joe, good to see you. Marjorie Daring. Hi, I'm on time and have the popcorn ready. Good. I want
pass
some
it over.
popcorn.
I'm hungry.
Joe Conjo says it's dark and getting ready to storm here too. Paul Hollis says, hi, Joan and Rob.
Hi, Paul.
We're so glad that you're here. It's so great to see so many faces.
Comments?
Okay. We do know all your faces.
Yes, we do.
It's nice to see you in the
audience. Hey, we want to remind everybody to, after the show tonight, to pop over to Voice of Indie podcast, Beam Weeks and Gary G's. The guest tonight is author Annette Aben. You can listen, and just like Old Time Radio, you can call in and ask questions. So that's really cool. blogtalkradio.com. It's Voice of Indie Podcast, episode 101. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And, Fun.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and bring Stacy out?
All right.
Come on in, Stacy.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you all so much again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being on the show.
We're
glad to have you
get to know you and hear about your work.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. When we were doing the pre-show, I was absent because I was babysitting our two youngest grandchildren. Paul Hollis says, hi, Stacy.
Hello, Paul.
So I'm going to get to know her right along with all of you guys tonight for a change. That's different. The meeting was considerably shorter than when I'm at the meeting.
It was still a half hour.
Not that I talk a lot or anything, but I talk a lot.
It felt shorter. I think the time just flew because we were just enjoying talking about different things, from books to ghost hunting and all that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. We do love ghost hunting.
So how did you get, what got you into writing about what you write about there, about North Carolina?
Well, actually, this story I started writing it in 2008. It came from a scrapbook of my grandmother's that I inherited when she passed away. And I didn't realize that I still had the scrapbook. I'd seen the story before. I'd seen it when I was in high school in this scrapbook. It was an article written by Terry Martin of the Winston-Salem Journal. And it was titled The Awfulest Thing. And so I just sort of picked up the article that day. I was at home in 2008, and I was like, I really want to know more. I want to know what happened to this girl. I want to know how far the case got. I want to know what answers the family received, if any at all. And, I was just kind of saddened by the fact that there was never any real closure for the family. But at the same time, this investigation turned into so much more than I thought it would. I thought I might just use it as a research project or something along those lines, but then it just sort of turned out to be a book the next thing I knew, because I was hearing characters talking to me and imagining conversations that the sheriff must have had with the coroner, and the coroner must have had with the newspaper editor and the journalists that were involved at the time. So it was an interesting few years. It was like 2-3 years of writing this book and researching and editing and making sure everything was factually sound and following the timeline.
And what's the name of the victim?
Elva Brannick.
Elva Brannick. Okay. We have a few comments. George Dismuke says, made it. I've been busy trying on straight jackets. I'm sure, George, I'm sure that your movie's driving you nuts at this point. Barbara Duffy Hennison is here. She says, I'm here, Mom and Dad. Hi, Barb. And this is our other daughter, Trish Pipkins, who says, hello. She's been missing for a long while. This is the daughter I told you about who knows all about true crime and follows all that stuff. She knew exactly who you wrote about.
She's not a killer.
No.
no, we never are. But our browser history would make you think.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, those of us that write murder mysteries also have very interesting browser histories, which we're always wondering, when is the FBI actually going to pull up into the driveway and say, what have you been doing? Chris Chrisman says, hi, it's raining here too.
Hi, Chris.
Ooh, it's a stormy night. It's a good time to talk about murder.
Everywhere but Texas.
So now, do you write this as a fictionalized version of her murder and the search for her murderer, or do you write it as more like a true crime in a nonfiction?
It's really interesting. I've had people compare it to Truman Capote's In Cold Blood and then To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
I've had people, tell me it's kind of like that. There is a lot of facts in the book. I kind of split it up. I wanted it to be part historical fiction, part true, because it was based on a true story. And I did want to share what I knew and what I had learned about Elva Brannick and her family and this case with readers and let them, take it from there.
Okay, yeah, so that's a good way of describing it. Very familiar with both those books.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, To Kill a Mockingbird is perhaps one of my favorite all-time books.
Pretty much
I love
mine,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Oh, here we've got a question. First, I'll tell you, Chris Christmas said research equals reflex.
That's true.
For real.
That is absolutely true. Let me tell you, I have a BA degree in history. I have an MED in education from Liberty University. I spent a lot of time in Brevard College researching, writing research papers, learning citation formats, the whole 9 yards. This book is done in Chicago style format. If you see the citations, if you go back to the footnotes, you'll see they're all done in Chicago style format. Also, there were individuals that we did have to pay in order to use material. So you have to be careful of copyright as well. And beware that, there are certain items that are not up for free. I mean, you just can't post them out there and publish them and they're all yours. That's not how it goes.
Without getting sued anyway.
Right, without getting sued. So the AP was involved, of course, because there are some newspaper articles. There is a newspaper photo that we got permission to use from the AP, and we paid for that photo to use it. So yeah, of course, anytime you research, it's red flags. Anytime you interview, make sure that you have permission from that individual to use their words, word for word, in a document, and just do your due diligence, basically.
As we were just saying before the show, that we're going to put up on our Tampa Bay Spirits, our paranormal investigation team, we're going to be putting up some material that we took while investigating in a house. And it was in a private home. It wasn't a public space. And we needed to get their permission to be able to post what we found, because it concerns them and they could sue us. Trish Pipkins has a question. Do you think the case will be solved? I'm thinking of reaching out to a YouTuber who goes by Gabulosis. This is her type of case.
I always hope that it can be. I do. I think that's an interesting question too, because I've been asked it many times. I mean, do I think I solved it? I think I do. I think I did. I think if you read my book, you might follow my train of thought a little bit. But I was really hoping I would be able to add more validity and more evidence to what was there. Unfortunately, there is no case file for her now. There is no evidence that I could find at our local courthouse or anywhere pertaining to anything that might help further the investigation at this point. It is a cold case unless there is some shred of DNA out there somewhere. And I've heard all kinds of theories about what happened or who might have done it to her. But I mean, I challenge anybody to take it up that's interested and would like to learn more about Allegheny County and our history, and also about Elva Brannick and this case.
When was she murdered? What year?
1937.
Wow, that is a very cold case, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was even before I was born.
Yeah. So it got mentioned.
Not many years before I was born, but it was
Yeah.
Before I was born.
Yeah, it was definitely before I was born. And so it got mentioned in the newspapers a lot in 1937, from 1937 to 1938. And then it kind of just falls off the grid. And then in the 1950s, there was another case that kind of tied into Elva's case in my county again. And I thought it was fascinating. And that case is also in the book in Dividing Ridge. And you can read all about that.
Oh.
But yeah, so it got mentioned again. Elva Branick's name got mentioned again in the 1950s. And then nothing until 1981 in Terry Martin's journal, and he has an article in the Winston-Salem Journal. So nothing until then. I mean, it went a long time with no mention. And then, of course, I bring it up again in 2019.
Here's the cover of that book that she's talking about, Dividing Ridge. What's the small print say?
It just says The Unsolved Murder of Elva Branick. And if you want to visit anywhere in Allegheny County, this cover is a real place. It is Devil's Garden. It's out on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I think it's milepost 237 or 235.7. Yeah.
We've driven that Blue Ridge Highway. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So Trish Pipkin says older cases have recently been solved, so there's hope.
Yeah, there is hope.
There's always hope. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the genealogy cases, the one where they get them with the DNA. Those have been fun to watch get solved over the years.
Right. But you have to have DNA.
Yeah, you have to.
Uncorrupted DNA.
Yep.
Yeah. And
so
that's hard.
How did you approach the beginning of the book? How does the book start out?
So the book starts out telling you a little bit about the history of Allegheny County, where it's located, and the people involved, and then it just sort of goes into the story itself. It talks about the office thing. It does talk about that newspaper article from Terry Martin in the Winston-Salem Journal, and then it goes into talking about Elva's family. And it starts out with her mom and her dad and her brothers and her sisters and who all is in the household at the time of her birth in the 1920s. And then it just sort of evolves from there. It evolves into her going to school as a young girl and then going missing on this cold February morning along the Blue Ridge Parkway. And then it leads into the 200 volunteers that go out and look for her.
Oh, wow. 200 volunteers. How old was she when she was murdered?
She was about 16, 17 years old and in the 7th grade at Dividing Ridge School here in the county. And that's actually where the title of the book came from. The title of the book was Dividing Ridge for her school, but also because it divided a community. I mean, people didn't feel safe. They didn't feel like they could go anywhere or do anything. And it was really a hard time for them, especially when they had children, because they were afraid the same thing would happen to someone that they loved or a child that they loved. And of course, the sheriff department and, the law enforcement, they didn't have any answers. They didn't know who might have done this. They just went and tried to look for it. And I mean, Sheriff Irwin really went above and beyond trying to solve this case.
That's interesting. Have there been a lot of murders along that same highway, or was this an unusual one?
This was kind of unusual. This was really like the first murder case we had here in the county that brought this much attention. And it being a young girl that was 17 years old, and she's described as a tall brunette beauty, nothing like that had really ever happened. So now you're looking at this, and it's really scary because they don't know who it is. And it could have been anybody. And some of the theories were it was moonshiners. Moonshining was big in the mountains back then, bootlegging. And, if you ran into a still or you ran into something that you shouldn't have, you could have gotten into a lot of trouble, namely killed, of course. But then there was also the theory that it was someone she loved, a boyfriend, somebody who said, well, if she don't want to be with me, no one else can have her. So I'm going to just go ahead and kill her and she'll always be, she'll always be with me. And then there's the theory of, there's so many theories. There was a guy that said that he confessed on his deathbed, and I got so many correspondences after the book come out, but there's no telling.
Wow.
Just a lot of different things, a lot of different scenarios.
Caleb has a question. Were you tempted to turn the story into pure fiction and have the murder solved?
Yeah, I was tempted to, but I thought, well, it wouldn't really do her justice or do her story justice, or, no one would really want to, I don't guess, go back and poke around and see what they could find. I just really had this vision of this book being a mystery and an unsolved mystery, and leaving it up pretty much to my reader's imagination as to what happens next.
This really pulled you in, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. It was a whole 2 years of just, I mean, I spent countless hours at our newspaper office, at our Register of Deeds office. I interviewed people. I tried to get interviews with people. I did everything imaginable, everything that my history degree and my history experience from college and everything had taught me to do. And I was like, I really just want to find out what happened to her, what happened in this case. And it was fascinating to see how far the case got, and especially how far Irwin carried it, and it being 1937.
Yeah, boy, that's amazing, Stacy. That's really wonderful. Marjorie Deering says, I admire the resolve of real crime authors. The research must be mind-boggling. Yeah, she just told us.
It is. I mean, I had this old notebook and I carried it around with me forever. This thing was so ragged. And I would just take it out during lunch breaks and things like that between my work and also getting my master's degree. And I would just scribble down just different scenes and things that I would want to put in the book, and ideas and things that came to me as it hit me. And anytime you stand outside, stuff will hit you because you're in the mountains and it's a beautiful space. And that's when it would always happen for me.
Did it keep you awake at night?
Yeah, keep me awake at night. Yeah. Definitely.
Excuse me.
Okay, bless you.
Thank you.
I thought you were going to cry. Well, God bless you.
Teresa Fox says, do you have a second book? And if so, what's it about? Well, Teresa, let me tell you. I will tell you and show you in just a minute. Here it is, Devil's Ridge.
Yes, it's titled Devil's Ridge, and it's about a moonshining bootlegging individual who runs a moonshine operation across multiple counties. And along the way, he steals cars, stock races, and blows up a few things. He's always a step ahead of the law until he steals a car across the line in Virginia that gets the attention of all the law enforcement here in the county over there, the BOI, which is actually the Bureau of Investigation, or is now the FBI, and several North Carolina agencies down in Raleigh.
Let's go back to the cover for a minute. So the other one was, obviously a real picture.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this isn't a real picture.
This photo, I specifically wanted Devil's Ridge to have this look to it, like it's a fiery sunrise, it's a fiery morning or a fiery evening, and that theme kind of sticks throughout the books. I mean, when you read the book, you'll see that there is some moments where our characters are in a scene that looks like it's on fire.
Cool. That's very cool.
Now, is this one also true crime?
It is loosely based on an individual in the community, and I actually found that story while I was researching for Dividing Ridge at our local newspaper, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so in 2010 or 11, when I finished Dividing Ridge, I started writing this story, but I didn't come back to it till 2020, and it's kind of a big time gap there to come back to a book and be like, did I do enough? Did I research it enough? How do I want to work this one? Now, this one I did turn into pure historical fiction. I didn't do the footnotes. I didn't do the Chicago style format. I didn't do the extra stuff just because, I wanted to have a little more fun with this character.
And Paul Hollis wants to let everyone know that moonshiner was not him.
Then we would hear from our true moonshiner.
He started when he was 5, by the way.
That is
awesome. Influenced by his dad.
And he said, well, yeah, his dad made him do it. And Paul Hollis says, great cover.
Thank you.
It is a great cover.
We need to break for
a commercial already, people.
A word from our sponsors.
A word from our sponsor.
When we come back, we'll tell you all how to reach Stacy, and we'll have our book giveaway. How about that? That'll be kind of fun, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here we go. Don't go away, guys.
This is a good one, George.
They thought the siren was dead. In the novel, Siren Song, by author George Dismukes, James Harmon shot her twice. Several people saw her dead body sinking slowly into the abyss. But now, in Siren Song 2, evidence suggests that she may still be alive.
She killed that boatload of people. It was her! And she's just getting started!
Angie, that's impossible.
The cold chill up my spine tells me it's not impossible. We've got to start all over again. And this time, do it right.
Siren Song 2. The story continues. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Get your copy today.
In a world where advancing technology is outpacing crime solving, the O'Rourke team continues their relentless pursuit of justice. Bioprints is the first book in the O'Rourke crime novel series where it's high-tech crime versus old-fashioned detective work. Visit carternovels.com or amazon.com and check out Bioprints today. And we're back. Just like magic.
That we weren't gone that long, were we? I'm sorry, people. I'm having a lot of trouble.
It's the weather.
It is the weather. Okay, so if you want to get in touch with Stacy, you can go to her website, dividingridgebooks.wixsite.com/dridgebooks. And I'm going to spell it this time. dividingridgebooks.wixsite.com. You've got, and then dridgebooks. So that's her website, and you can reach her there. And then for her Facebook page, it's Dividing Ridge 37. That's self-explanatory. Instagram, Dividing Ridge Author.
And we haven't talked about her podcast yet, but we can tell the link on that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can hear her podcast on Connect on Twitter at The Writing Wall. And how did they look that up?
On Twitter.
Yeah.
Just on Twitter and on the
Twitter,
Writing Wall.
and just search The Writing Wall.
Yep.
And find you.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to go to the book giveaway. And here we go, everybody. Get your fingers ready.
Oh, well, first I should give her email.
I'm going to bring it
All
up
right.
too. The first 3 people to email dividingridgebooks@gmail.com will win an ebook copy of choice. And here's a bigger version of the email address so you can read it better. But go ahead, get the first 3 people out there and send those emails.
And you can have either book.
Yep.
Choose which one you want, Dividing Ridge or Devil's Ridge.
And we do have them in audiobook format. So if anyone prefers audiobook, just let me know via email.
Okay. We have a question for you. I'm going to have to take down here we go. Joe Conjal said, "Hi, Stacy. Do you see yourself moving into not true crime fiction stories, perhaps a series?"
Yeah, incidentally, this is becoming a series, and it wasn't intentional. So it's becoming the Ridge series. I've learned my next book, which I'm actually doing my first round of edits for now. It does not have a name yet, but I do know it's part of the Ridge series, and it doesn't have a cover yet, but it is part of the Ridge series. And I'm just waiting to get all the edits done and everything done. So yeah, it is fictional, but you will see some of the same characters from Dividing Ridge and Devil's Ridge in this book. We just sort of take those characters a little step forward. Of course, got a new sheriff though, and I know that an individual that I know, she's related to this sheriff. I know she'll be excited once I tell her that he is in the book, and he's our MC this time.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you're using a real sheriff.
Yes, and Walter Irwin was a real sheriff back then.
I understood that. Yes.
Yeah. And so his granddaughter and I met. Her name is Brenda Irwin Frizzell, and I've had the pleasure of meeting a great many people from these 2 books, and real people from the books and their family members. I also met recently, actually at an event about a year or so ago, but recently in the newspaper. She was in our paper. Her name is Gladys Parks. She's 103 years old here in the county, and she was a friend of Elva Brannick.
Wow.
How about that?
So it was really special to see her in the paper, and really special to see my book tied to that.
Wow, that's amazing. What did she have to say about it, Stacy?
She was friends with her. She walked to school with her, and they didn't live far from one another. Her father's farm was close to Elva's father and her family and their farm, and they lived in the same, and they went to the same school. They went to Dividing Ridge School together.
Wow, that has to be like horrifying for back then, especially.
Oh, yeah.
for a young girl that age to have her friend murdered, and that's got to affect your life. I mean, I'm not sure I'd be walking to school anytime soon.
No, a lot of people didn't. A lot of people kept their kids at home. They wouldn't let them go. And even the teacher went around and tried to get them to let her walk them to school every day.
Yeah. I mean, it was a different time back then for sure. You know, I mean, I was born 10 years after that.
Wow.
And when I was growing up, you played outside all the time, and you know, did things that I would never let my children do. And I certainly hope my children aren't letting my grandchildren do. No, my grandchildren are all grown up except for a couple of them anyway. Only kidding. That was for dramatic effect.
Pretty dramatic.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. Marjorie Daring says, crime fiction requires lots of research, too, just not this same sort, but you still lose just as much sleep. This is true, Marjorie.
Yeah, this is very true. Yeah, I'm like, it was amazing. I had to go look up the cars, the make of the cars, the make of the guns that the sheriffs would carry, the suits, how they carried things. I mean, just all sorts of different things. Like I had to ask. I think one of the things was car radios actually, and when was car radios invented for Devil's Ridge? Because I was like, I'd like for Irwin to have a radio in his car, if at all possible. So
did they have them in cars?
They did not yet. But I added one anyway because I was like, he's got to know something. So, but you know, I mean, you can play with it just a little bit because it's like a few years off, I think, from having a car radio.
Well, most people reading now wouldn't know anyway. I had to ask you. So
right.
Other things you do have to be precise about, though, because it'll take people right out of the story. If you're really off, they're going to go, that doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think, too, I talked to another author not long ago, and he had the same experience I had with books. He said that he went to the places and he understood the places and the people, and he kind of immersed himself in that place. And that's kind of what I did here with these books. I mean, it is my county. It is my town. I do know it. I've rode the Blue Ridge Parkway many times. I know where she's buried. I know what the church looks like. I know, so I try to incorporate as much that I knew in the book and make it as real as possible too. So.
Well, you met the granddaughter of the sheriff, not the grandfather of the sheriff. That would have been scary. That would have been
paranormal show.
Yeah.
Experience.
The granddaughter of the sheriff.
Yes.
And you said you met some of the family members of.
Actually, one of the stores that is featured in Devil's Ridge and Dividing Ridge is called Smithy's, and B. Smithy's store. It's located on Main Street. And Tanya, who works there and who owns the store, she is actually Elva's great niece. And so she supports indie authors here in the community, and she carries my books.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
So her father or her mother was a sibling.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really something. That's pretty great that you're doing this too, though. I mean, you don't know, your book could really garner enough attention that somebody will think of something or know something even after all this time, because stories get handed down in families, and
they sure do. And I mean, and like I said, I've been contacted before, and a lot of people have offered up, their own theories as to what happened and all this. And it's really interesting to see that after the book came out, and then meeting these people that come to the book signings, and they're like, oh, my grandfather told me about this story, or my grandmother told me about this story, or here's this. But Brenda walks in with this great big scrapbook full of stuff that her grandfather did. So it made him a little more real for me. And then it just sort of helped me grow his character in Devil's Ridge. So you really do see a full-scale Irwin coming to life in Devil's Ridge.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And Trish Pipkins wants to know, what other cold case, famous, do you hope will be solved?
Really, the John Benet Ramsey case would be great to see solved.
They've solved it many times.
Yeah, I know. I know, but it would be great to just have a definitive
Yeah.
answer on
Right.
what happened there.
Sort of like Elva's case. People have
Yeah.
solved that many times also.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
you said,
absolutely.
there's
Yeah.
all different theories.
There's always theories,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of different unsolved cases that I'd like to see solved. I love unsolved mysteries on their podcast and the new Netflix series, but there'll never be anybody like Robert Stack, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Doing the original thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, so that's one, but there's several others. There's a few here in the community that I'd like to see solved. There's still
Yeah.
some unsolved murders that we have on file now that were pretty recent that we need to solve.
Yeah, you could write about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the stories are just heartbreaking when you watch them.
Yeah,
You
they
know?
really are. Yeah, they really are.
And
Because
especially-
you want closure for the family. You want the family to have some kind of answers.
Yes.
And I know it doesn't bring anybody back, but
Right.
just to have that peace of mind that they're not going to be able to do that to anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just so heartbreaking to see what happened to the victim, and you want justice for that
Yeah.
person, because some of the stuff is just, awful. Well, I mean, it's all awful. Yeah.
Well, another good thing your book is doing is keeping her memory alive.
In the case
Yeah.
alive.
She just like disappeared.
Right.
Yeah, she really did, but I didn't want her story to do that. So
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Joe Conjal says he would love to see the D.B. Cooper solved. Yeah.
yes, do you know that they actually have a full DNA profile now for D.B. Cooper?
Do they?
Wow.
Yeah.
So was it that man that they thought it was that?
I think the one guy they thought it was that the FBI was after for a long time,
Yeah.
the DNA didn't match him. It didn't match.
Wow.
So there is a profile. This was on, and I mean, I watched a few episodes. It was on the History Channel, and I was like, I've got to follow this thing through, and I just watched it. But it was really good, and they got a DNA profile off of his tie clip.
They the man that they thought that the FBI thought it was and that they had followed for so long, I think has already passed away. I'm pretty
Did he
sure.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
he
so.
did. Yeah. I think he
Yeah.
did too.
Trish Pipkin says, so true. Robert Stack was awesome. He was.
Yeah.
And Trish says, Joe Conjal, I thought they recently solved it. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. And then Joe says, I think the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, I think it is too. But I think it's just a matter of time.
Oh,
It's a matter of
gosh.
time.
Yeah. Oh, this one. Okay. This one hits close to home. This one was close, literally close to our house. Madeline McCann is
Madeline
another
McCann.
one. And not Madeline, but the baby that disappeared from Valrico, Florida. Remember that case so close to home? Tricia
Yeah.
said, yes. Yeah, that was, oh my gosh. That was horrible that somebody came in and took the baby and people thought it was the parents, and yeah,
That's a nightmare scenario. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in those parents or that shoes of that family. I just couldn't imagine.
in both of those cases, they
Yeah.
thought the same of Madeline McCann's for years. I mean, goodness gracious, you've gone through this horrible thing and people think you did it,
Yeah. And even though Joran Vandersloot got locked up for it, I still think Natalie Holloway's case needs more answers.
Mhm.
I really do.
Beam Week says, interesting discussion. I don't hold out hope for the John Bonet murder being solved. Very sad. Yeah, that's a
I don't
horrible.
either. Yeah.
That is a horrible case. And her mother, of course, died of cancer in the meanwhile. And these cases are really sad. Writer Brad, Joe Conjal says, writer Brad Meltzer used to host a great cold case type of show.
Yes, Brad Mitzler. I love his books. They're on my bookshelf behind me. He's like one of my go-to authors. Him and Steve Berry and Dan Brown and Vince Flynn.
Trish just said, and this is right, Sabrina Eisenberg, and that's right. She said, I finally remembered her name, baby Sabrina.
Yeah.
She was 8 months old, and someone came and took her, and we don't know what happened to her. But that was very close to home and just horrifying. Yep. Yeah, it was. And the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office tapped their phones, and I think even had bugs in their their head posts so they could hear everything that the parents were saying, and the parents didn't do it. And they stayed for a long time. They stayed living here, but because they wanted her to come home. But I think they finally moved away. I hope they're.
It is amazing with so much technology today. You wouldn't think there would be so many missing people or people that didn't have answers, or you couldn't make the connections to make a case strong enough to where you could arrest somebody for doing something to an individual like that, kidnapping them, murdering them, whatever. But back then, back in the 30s, when I was writing this time period that I was writing this book in, they didn't have that. They didn't have nothing. They just had the community and maybe an eyewitness or two, maybe if they got lucky. And then if they didn't get lucky, then they just had a cold case on their hands for forever and ever. And sadly, that was the case for Elva.
Yeah, and circumstantial evidence.
Sure.
What else could they have? Caleb Pirtle wants to know, are you digging your way through old newspaper files for another Allegheny mystery?
I have dug and dug in that paper, and I'm telling you, it is incredible the stuff that they have been able to keep and preserve, and all due diligence is due to them for that. I go through the newspapers all the time. I mean, that's basically where you find some great stories and some great inspiration. Actually, my third book, the third book that I have, or actually my fourth book that's on the back burner, actually came out of Allegheny News again. So it's an Allegheny story, but it's going to have a little twist to it. It's definitely going to be all historical fiction. The third book is completely made up, and it's completely my own imagination, but it features Allegheny County in it again, and it features our surrounding county, Wilkes County, down below the mountain.
And some real people and some real stores and all that.
Yeah.
Trish Pickman said that was the FBI that did that on the Sabrina case, and they got nothing, but they lied and said they found evidence. The parents moved to Maryland. Yeah, I remember that. And Trish asked, did they have fingerprinting in the 30s? And I know the answer to that.
Yes, they most certainly did. They did. And that was a painstaking process.
They had them in the 1800s.
Yeah, they had them in the 1800s. It was a painstaking progress. So,
yes.
They had to go through. They had to look at each individual person. And could you imagine the people sitting there doing this, going through this on their desk and holding up these things, trying to determine, is this the right fingerprint to the right person or the right? Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to say that there was no CODIS. There was nothing like that. There was no CODIS, no automatic system to say, oh, this is John so-and-so. So no, it was all done by eyeball, completely by eyeball. So they relied on that.
But they started doing it in the 1800s. So
yeah, absolutely. Because they figured out, just like DNA, it's a fingerprint and it's different to each and every one of us.
Yep.
So
let's see. Would you ever write about a true crime case? This is Joe Conjo. Would you ever write about a true crime case outside of North Carolina?
Sure, I would. Sure. That's the right one. if it speaks to me and I think it's something that I can pull off, absolutely.
Well, you're pretty close to Virginia and Georgia too, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
Tennessee.
I've looked at stories from around there too, around the Virginia area, and that too. Virginia plays a little more of a role in Devil's Ridge than it did Dividing Ridge. So you'll see a little more of Virginia in that book.
Caleb Pirtle said, it's amazing how a 3-paragraph newspaper story in 1942 can turn into a 300-page novel.
Yes. It most certainly is. I wasn't expecting Devil's Ridge to turn out as big as as long as it did, to be honest. And Dividing Ridge, like I said, I was just expecting it to be like a paper, something that I could use possibly for my PhD thesis at some point or in a different field. But it turned out they were both books. So it's
but
amazing.
what I like is you said that the people called to you to write the book.
Yeah. The story has to speak to me in order for me to feel like I'm going to write it, or that I need to write it and tell it. And hers was just one of those stories.
Yeah,
that's cool. We need to take our second commercial break. So everybody,
a second word from our sponsor.
Sit tight. We're going to talk some more with Stacy about what she's got planned in the future here. So stand by.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Behold, this one about a man, a woman, a black jaguar, and an ancient Maya legend. Two Faces of the Jaguar is a novel by George Dismukes that will take you deep into the jungle and capture your imagination until the last word. Two Faces of the Jaguar is book one of a trilogy. Two Faces of the Jaguar, where only the adventurous dare to read.
Two Faces of the Jaguar, The Lost City, and The Jaguar's Quest are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Two Faces of the Jaguar, the book people are talking about. Get your copy today.
At Indie Booksource, you can shop by genre or by author, and you will be buying direct from the author's main purchase link. We offer hundreds of titles in formats that include ebooks, paperback, hardbound, and audiobook. Support an indie author. Visit indiebooksource.com today.
And we're back again.
And I did want to remind you that if you haven't done it already, that you can email Stacy at dividingridgebooks@gmail.com, and you'll win an ebook copy of your choice of either one of those two books.
If you're one of the first three people.
If you're one of the first three. Yep. Yes. Okay.
So,
sorry,
Stacy, you were talking about future things when we talked yesterday, and with publishing and with the books that you have coming up. You already touched on the books that the
third book.
Third book. Do you want to talk any more about that, or?
The third book should be out probably, and I'm shooting for mid to late 2023. And as for future things, Dividing Ridge Books, we're branching out. We're doing different things. We support indie authors. We offer promotional assistance for local authors. We've helped authors build website pages, free websites for them, and for them to showcase their books, and for them to have a place to advertise as well. And we're looking forward to whatever the future holds for us. I'm hoping eventually to possibly even help people publish in KDP format and become indie authors themselves. So that would be fun for us.
Yeah. It's a fun profession, actually.
It really is. It's really interesting. You never know what story is going to come across, and how it might touch people. And if you can help get it out there and get someone's story out there, that's great.
Yeah, it is. It is great. I just think being an author is really fun, and all of the authors that we've met and that we know are wonderful people.
Yeah.
Marjorie Daring says, is it difficult for you to get cooperation from members of law enforcement when it comes to helping you dig into old files?
No, actually, a law enforcement officer helped me to learn a little bit more about the history of the Sheriff's Department in Surrey County, North Carolina for Devil's Ridge. So, having a conversation with him was really fun and interesting. And he knew a whole heck of a lot about the history there in the department as well as in the community. So that was fun. No, I don't think I had any problem with that. I think if I just ask, someone will tell you. It's a small town. If they can't find it, they let you know they can't find it, or they let you know where to go and they refer you somewhere else to somebody that can help you.
That's great. That's really great. I think most law enforcement officers do like to do that. It's a relief from what they're normally dealing with.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Sure.
It gives them something else to focus on. If you ever do a ride along, you'll find out how much they really enjoy doing that.
Yeah. I have a lot of respect for the jobs that they do, and it is not an easy job by no means, and you know that a lot of them have a hard time. They have to make last minute calls and decisions that can affect not just their life but impact a lot of other people's lives as well. And so I applaud them for all that they do. But our small community, we've never had any problem with going up to them, asking them something, and them telling you exactly what you need.
Yeah. So you said it was Sheriff Irwin who was the sheriff when Elba was murdered, right?
Yes, yeah, he was sheriff when Elba was murdered, and he had a deputy with him who I wrote in. I'm not really sure if the deputy had anything to do with it or not, but I know that he was around during that time. His name was Charlie Shepard, and so him and Charlie was basically tracking down these people and going after each lead and trying to find out who was involved. And Irwin went above and beyond as far as trying to solve this case. And you know, this case actually lasted 10 sheriff's administrations, so there were 10 sheriffs in this county trying their hardest to solve this case. Every sheriff that came across their desk, and they were like, let's try. And no one tried harder than Irwin and then Sheriff Joe Roberts in the 80s here in Allegheny County.
Yeah, and they're all people. They have, you know, families, and this has to be difficult for them when they can't solve something like this. It's got to bother them.
Yeah.
Caleb Pirtle says, like authors, law enforcement officers have stories to tell and are excited to have a chance to tell them.
Absolutely. I would have gave anything to talk to my MC. I think I would have just been like, oh, this is crazy, and I'm talking to you. But Brenda Irwin, she really did, Brenda Irwin Frizzell, his granddaughter, she really did provide a lot of information and a lot of backstory to him. And she was kind enough to actually go through an interview process with me. And even her godmother, who is still alive, she's in her 90s out in Washington State. Even she provided me with background on Irwin and told me a little bit about his character. And she's like, you know, you nailed him in that book. Like, that is him.
Oh,
and I had never met him. I didn't know anything beyond what I was reading in the newspaper, but she's like, you nailed him. So
great praise.
Wow.
That was good to hear.
Yeah, no
Doesn't
kidding.
get any better than that.
No. And Marjorie Daring said that's terrific about the law enforcement
Cooperating,
officers and cooperating and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that, you know, you can call up and ask all kinds of questions no matter where you live. And the same with colleges and universities, a lot of professors that love to talk and give you info.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of that too. I had a lot of different books that I read for this. I know that, I don't know if y'all are familiar with a show called Murder Tapes on Netflix. It has Douglas and Ola Shaker in it. They were the original people that studied criminology and criminal minds. And I had to read that book from them. And it was called Anatomy of a Murderer, to get inside this guy's head, or these people's heads that might have killed her, and try to come up with an invisible antagonist for the story.
Marjorie Daring says, Joe Kenda, the homicide hunter, certainly got that chance. I love that show.
My dad does too. He loves Joe Kenda.
I've never watched that show. I'll have to watch it now. I mean, I've seen it constantly.
Yeah.
You know, the homicide.
He has another one, American Detective, I think too. So I mean, that's a great show too. My dad loves to follow Joe Kenda, so we've been watching him in the house.
Trish Pipkin says, that really makes me think characters in books, even from real people, tell the author how to write them. So cool. And that you got the sheriff correctly. It is.
That was
the
crazy.
Characters do talk to authors, and they do direct the way the book goes. So it's,
no doubt about that.
It's a crazy thing, but it really happens. But like she said, it's great that even so, they're real.
Yeah, and I could just tell by looking at a photo of him too that he looked like somebody that didn't give up easy. And he was, you know, he was really in his job, and he loved his job, and he went on to become a U.S. Marshal. So, yeah.
Cool.
Trish says, Joe Kenda is the best. My.
Well, Stacy, you said we haven't talked about it yet, but you've got a podcast.
Yeah.
We gave people the ability to be able to get to it. How often do you have the podcast, and what's it about?
So the Writing Wall podcast is on every second and fourth Saturday of the month at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right now we're on break. Our season 5 starts August the 13th at 6 p.m. And we host a variety of authors, indie authors, traditional authors. We've interviewed Nikki Weisense Egan of Chase and Cosby. We've interviewed Charlie Lovett. We've interviewed Donna Everhart. We've interviewed Philip Raymond Brown of It Gives You Strength. We've interviewed another great friend of mine is Hurricane Dario Peregrina. He's wrote Hurricanes 2007. I mean, we've just done all kinds of fun, cool, interesting books and stories, different genres, and we've had a good time with the authors, getting to know them and promoting their books, because we promote their book for the whole week. on our platforms, our Instagram and Twitter platforms, and we share the links and stuff with them, and we give them promos also to share out there with everyone, and let them know the Writing Wall podcast is out there and promoting them. So they just have a great time. We have a great time doing it, and we're in our 5th season. We're really surprised at how much the podcast has grown.
Yeah. Yeah, we enjoy doing it too.
Yeah.
We love it. We do the same thing. We promote all week and send out to our authors, as you know. Gave you all the links. Yeah. Joe Conjal says, what was the podcast called? It's
the
Writing
Wall. Yeah.
With the in front of the Writing Wall.
Yes.
Yeah. I know. This is great. I love all this cross promotion of podcasts too.
Absolutely. And we enjoy doing that. So like if anybody needs a shout out or anything like that, they can visit us on Twitter. And if they would like to say, hey, take a look at my book, give me a shout out, we'll give you a shout out across our platforms, and we'll let everybody know that you're a writer and you're an indie author and you have a book out there. We even have our Buy Me a Coffee page. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/The Writing Wall, and our members there get specialized book ads that can be heard during our podcast season and can even be heard on our platforms.
Cool.
George Dismukes has a question. He says, how far are you from Greensboro? I have a friend there who is a manager of a radio station.
So I am probably about 2.5 hours from Greensboro, I want to say. Don't take my word for that. It's been a while since I've been to Greensboro, but I'm pretty sure it's probably a couple hours.
Yeah. Joe Conjal's from North Carolina.
Yes, he is.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, fellow North Carolinian.
And one of our team members from Tampa Bay Spirits is in North Carolina. Yeah. I know she's a long way to be part of our team, but she does our research.
She's a researcher.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, we have to do it.
We have some great guests coming up on season 5 too. We have Susan Higginbotham of Hanging Mary. So if you're a historical fiction writer, be sure to tune in for Susan's interview. And we've got Sheila Myers too. The Truth of Who You Are. Her book is hitting it real big right now in Appalachia. It's an Appalachian story.
Joe Conjal says, hello, Charlotte area. Actually, lives near the racetrack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says he can hear it from his house.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. Moonshining, bootlegging, NASCAR, all of it kind of ties in together.
Yeah. North Carolina. It's a great state.
Sure.
Okay.
This is from a Floridian. Yeah, Joe says it is in his backyard almost.
Wow, man! I bet it is loud. I bet it's shaking the ground there, because I know they can get pretty fast around them tracks. Oh my gosh! Yeah,
you can pretty much hear it when you go down the highway past it too.
Yeah.
They're trying to get the one in Wilkesboro back. I certainly hope they do, because that was one of the major attractions here was the Wilkesboro Speedway.
Yeah, a lot of them closed down, and
never opened back up.
Open back up. Yeah, we need some fun entertainment instead of mass shootings all the time.
Right.
Yeah, that would be good.
Joe Conjal says great fireworks shows too.
Oh wow! I did not know that. That's interesting.
No, neither did I. Did they have it this year, Joe? Because we Boom in the Bay came back this year, so
yeah, finally.
Yeah.
We had a pretty good fireworks show. We had a pretty good one. It was pretty loud. I mean, I can actually see them from my house too, where I live, so I can see all the firework displays, which is fun.
That's cool.
Much better than being in that crowd.
Or right next door.
We used to live in California. We had a neighbor that used to put on quite a fireworks show too. We were always afraid our house was going to burn down. But anyway, when we lived in California, we used to sit and watch and see when the mountain would go on fire, because every year it did.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh, they have all the fireworks are after the races to celebrate the races. And George Dismukes says, trivia, stock car racing was born out of moonshiners souping up cars, of course.
Yes.
That makes sense.
George, that makes so much sense. Bringing it right around as to why that is in North Carolina. How cool is that?
Yes, it was born out of moonshine racing. Actually, there was a Mr. Johnson who talked about it in a book that I read doing research for this. He said, in the 1940s, there wasn't much to do in North Carolina unless you worked in a factory or you bootlegged. So
There you go.
Yeah, George says true fact. Yeah,
Yeah.
we believe it.
I can't tell you the ways I learned to modify cars from that research. Okay, like I can take out a back seat of a 19 something Ford Coupe and just throw in the moonshine bottles.
There you go.
Trish Pipkin said, I don't miss watching Mount Rubidoux catch on fire. Yeah, we did. We would sit and watch because every year it would catch on fire. It's like, how are you?
It's crazy.
Yes, you would think. Oh, perhaps we should point the fireworks in a different direction. But no, we did it the same way every year. And every year it caught on fire. And every year the fire department had to go.
I was getting ready to say the fire department was probably very busy.
Oh, yeah, they just waited for it to go up. And Marjorie Daring says, doing some of each, do you prefer being referred to as a historical fiction writer versus true crime writer, Stacy?
It doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I can be called a historical fiction / true crime writer, or I can be called a true crime writer. I mean, either way, it fits me pretty well, I think. I mean, what I write about is based on true crimes, but it's also historical fiction because of when it's set. So it's perfectly fine if you want to refer to me either way.
And history is a love of yours, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's my first love, history and writing.
And Joe Conjal says, I think that's what the Dukes of Hazzard were into also, LOL. Yeah.
Probably.
I think that's true. Being chased around the county.
Oh my goodness.
They had a muscle car.
For sure.
So I'll give you a little bit of background on this guy from the Devil's Ridge. What's interesting about him, and as people will see if they read the book or if they hear the book, and the great Stephen Marsden actually narrates this book, and he's fabulous. He's an award-winning narrator and everything. But anyway, the backstory to this guy is he steals cars from people on the mountain. So he stops people, and he's dressed as law enforcement when he does it, and he hijacks the cars. So there's a lot more to that story. But I mean, just so you know, that's where his muscle cars come from, and that's how he stock races and how he gets the moonshine from point A to point B.
See, this all came full circle. All the moonshine, all the races, everything.
There you go.
Yep.
Gee, I'm just getting to know an awful lot about North Carolina. Writer says it, Marjorie Daring says. That's right.
Yes.
Writer.
Yes, absolutely.
You're a writer. Historical fiction, true crime, whatever you want to say. I'm
a writer.
Yes.
So since you're a writer and we're just about ready to close, what advice would you have for somebody who wants to write but just hasn't really gotten up the gumption to do it yet?
I would say, if it's something that you love and something that you really want to do, just sit down and do it and get started, and let your characters lead you, because you never know where they're going to lead you to, and it might be a great story. And the first draft is always crap. Don't ever take the first draft for what it is, but just do your due diligence. And if it's historical fiction you're writing, make sure that you research right, and make sure you get all those permissions that you need, and just have fun with it, and learn how to promote and do your homework with that too. And don't do things backwards, because I did things backwards with my first book.
Everyone does.
Yeah, everyone does. Promote first, and then publish, and then release the book. So that's my advice. Yeah.
Joe Conjal said, I just added your podcast to his Apple podcast list.
Yay. Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that. I hope you enjoy the writing wall.
He will. I know he will. And Trish Pipkin says, I'm so glad I was able to make it to the show tonight. Thank you so much for answering my questions, Stacy. Great meeting you.
Oh, it was great meeting you too, Trish. Thank you so much for sticking around and joining us this evening.
Yeah. Well, she is a true crime lover. She wants to solve them all the cold cases.
So I want to echo that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
And telling us all about your books. It was really good.
Fascinating.
Thank you all thank you all again so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it, and I encourage everyone to follow Meet the Author podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. So we're going to move you over. Hey, I was able to do it.
Oh,
That's
yes.
amazing. Okay, stick around, Stacy. And let's see. Oh, we got a couple other comments
A few
here.
more comments here. Paul Hollis says, yes, great show. Thanks, everyone. And Joe Conjal says, awesome show. Thanks to Stacy and, of course, Rob and Joan. Thank you, guys. Wouldn't be a show without our audience.
There you go. We want to remind everyone, episode rewind Saturday evening, this Saturday, July 9th, 5:30 p.m., right here where you're watching right now. Lisa Sherwood Fabre, episode 32. And that was a really good episode, of course.
Hold on just for a second.
I will hold on.
Joy Shelton York, first time, great show. We're so glad to have you in the audience, and we're glad that you appreciated it and you liked it. And join us next week, same time.
Next week, we're going to have Lynette Cresswell, UK author.
Yes.
And that's a pre-record because we're going to be traveling.
Oh, that's right.
It was a very good, she's in England, so it was difficult for her to match up with our schedule. So we did a pre-record with her. And then on the 20th, that's next Wednesday for Lynette, the 13th. On the 20th, we'll have episode 66. It'll be our second Magnolia Bluff reveal. Jim Callahan, Brakefield and Berkey, and Richard Schwint will take us into their portions of Magnolia Bluff, Texas.
And this is what Rob is reading now.
That's what I'm reading right now. I'm
in black and
enjoying
white.
it very much.
Caleb Pirtles.
Fascinating. It's great to be back in visiting Magnolia Bluff. I missed it, so I'm back there again.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Oh, and then on the 27th, Frank Ruffalo. Ruffalo, of course. I'm going to do that on the show too. But at any rate.
Yes, Joe Congal knows it.
Good, Joe Congal. It's Conjal. Hello.
Yeah, I think we've got it now. Joe Congal.
Anyway, okay, I think we're done. Until next time.
That's all, folks.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.